And joining us now with an in-depth look at the election is CTV News political commentator and former federal NDP leader Tom Mulcair. It's good to see you, Tom, and I think a lot of people will echo what my colleague Beatrice had to say. This is one of the most important elections in a generation. I'm curious, from all your years in politics, have you ever seen an election play out the way it has over the last couple of months?
No, I've never seen any provincial or federal election with this type of stakes for the average Canadian voter. That's why we saw the engagement we saw for the advanced polls, Jamie. 7.5 million Canadians have already cast their ballot, and I'm expecting a record turnout today, and it's going to be quite something.
I was going to, given the fact that we had record turnout at the advanced polls, does that always, translate, that kind of, strong interest translate on election day? And keep in mind, it's a pretty beautiful day here in Ontario.
You know what? You're not wrong to talk about the weather, because if it was cold and rainy, that dampens the enthusiasm of much older voters. We live that. One of my provincial elections, I got elected a few times provincially before going federal, and I can tell you, in one of ours, the weather was awful by the midday, and we couldn't get the older people out anymore to vote. So yeah, it's definitely a factor. Today is a glorious day. It's going to be easy to get people out. They've got all their, the well-organized parties have people there offering to drive you, and I think we will see a record turnout. It's an indication that Canadians are that concerned about Donald Trump's continued threats, because he was making them again just over the past couple of days. And I think that it's played into Mr. Carney's hands. It's become, by the way, a two-way race, the likes of which we haven't seen in a generation, where it's just the Conservatives and the Liberals. And it's not that the NDP has run a lousy campaign. It's not that the Greens don't have ideas. It's not that the Bloc doesn't have its constituency. It's just that everybody else is being tossed to the side. Mark Carney versus Pierre Poilievre, Liberal versus Conservative. That's what it's coming down to.
What do you think is going to be the key factor for either Poilievre or Mr. Carney to walk away victorious? And I ask that keeping in mind that, for a lot of NDP voters who might have been on the fence about, placing their vote with the NDP again, they're probably leaning towards someone like Mark Carney. And for people out there who are undecided, maybe on the People's Party of Canada, whether or not they want to continue to put their vote that way and split the vote, or whether they're going to go with the Conservatives because they don't want the Liberals to win. What's your take on that, and how that plays into voter sentiment and strategy?
I think you've nailed it, Jamie. That's exactly it. The voting universe of the Liberals is quite large. I can't think of a single person I know who votes regularly for the Green Party who would ever say, I'm going to go vote Conservative. So if they're in a race where they're saying there's not a chance for their local Green candidate, you can see them moving over to the Libs. A lot of NDPers have apparently done that as well, if we look at the polling. Similarly, even though it's only a couple of percent that Maxime Bernier's People Party of Canada gets, they might be looking at local races saying, you know what, this time around it's too close. I'm going to stick with Poilievre. So you're absolutely right. That's sometimes called strategic voting, and it's part and parcel of Canadian politics. And it's one of the reasons that, to our previous point, that all of the other parties are being tossed aside, and it's a concentration on the two-way races. So if you're a little bit ideologically closer to the Liberals, you're going to go with Carney, and same thing, obviously, for the Conservatives under Poilievre.
And Tom, what's been so fascinating to watch is just how the tides have changed so much when it comes to the polling at a time when the Conservatives were up about 26 points when Justin Trudeau was still the Prime Minister. It was the Conservatives' race to lose, but then things change and anything can happen in politics. And I'm wondering, when you look back and kind of doing a post-mortem on this election, what are some of the key takeaways? What were some of the TSN turning points, as some might say?
I think the turning point was the change in landscape that was defined by Trump's re-election, Trudeau's decision to leave, and Carney's election as Liberal leader. Completely changed the look of Canadian politics. And Mr. Poilievre is a very determined, strong politician, but he just wouldn't admit it, couldn't see it, couldn't adapt, couldn't change. His whole theme has changed, but he had to change his campaign at that point. He was still fighting the carbon tax, and Carney had gotten rid of it. He was down to talking about Carney's haircut. The day I heard Pierre Poilievre criticize Mark Carney's, quote, banker's haircut, I'm saying, okay, they've got nothing left. And that was the sense that you got. The last week, 10 days of his campaign has shown a lot of energy. He's a lot more focused, talking about, forcing Parliament back for the summer, which is his strongman approach. These lazy bums, I'm going to make them work this summer. I got these 3 bills that we're going to get through. It's a way of trying to talk to his base and try to reassure them, but a lot of them have moved away. There's no question about that.
Lastly, Tom, I think there's one thing that people on both sides of the aisle, political spectrum, can agree on, is that the country is very divided right now. And I'm wondering, whoever is prime minister, how do they unite this country moving forward?
I think the Canadians sense that, and that's one of the reasons that Carney is ahead. His campaign has been open. He's been optimistic. There's been light coming out of him. Whereas Mr. Poilievre is a very strong character, but very closed to other ideas. Once he's made up his mind, there's no room for anybody else or for compromise. And I think that your question is extraordinarily important, Jamie, because it goes to the heart of what we want to have the day after. And Carney, again, I think, wins quite easily as the person who could mend fences with the entire country, understands the anxieties in the West over issues involving energy, don't want to have somebody that's against them, and Carney has been doing everything he can to show that he's not. And I think that Mr. Poilievre is not able to be that much of a bridge builder. So I think that that's a key question, and we'll see how that plays out in the vote.
We shall see. Polls close at 9:30 tonight. Tom Mulcair, really appreciate your time, and you've done a fantastic job over the last couple months with us here at CP24, providing very fair, measured, and balanced perspective. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Tom.